Welcome to the second video in our house building series. We are going to take you from building permit to completed foundation in this video, so stick around and let's see how it's done.
After 2 months of waiting, it is time for a building permit.
So the first two things that the inspector's office asked us for were the E911 address and any perk testing and septic tank permitting that we may have had.
With this lot, the septic tank permit was already done by the previous owners.
So that saved us a lot of time and a lot of money because there's a long wait for those. And the 911 address was easy to obtain by calling our local E911 communications office. Building permits in our county are fairly inexpensive, so we paid $520 to get the thing done.
That plastic sign is for the building inspector. You have to post it at the front of the property that you are working on, and when you are ready for an inspection, you text a picture of it to the inspector, and he knows which house he's looking at.
The information written on the sign is the property address, the contractor's name, the owner's name, and your permit number. Now that the permitting process is complete, we are ready to get started.
Can't tell, it's digging day. So here we go.
So after a lot of discussion, we decided to go ahead and move the house back from where we had originally planned. The move puts us away from the road an additional 40 feet. So for this part of the job, we hired a company to help us with the excavation. It certainly would have been cheaper for us to rent the equipment and do it ourselves, but the amount of time it would have taken compared to an experienced operator, it just made much more sense for us to do it this way. We were really pleased with how well it turned out, and we definitely recommend hiring an experienced team to help you dig your footings and your foundation.
Okay, so what we decided to do for this build in particular is we wanted to go ahead and get as flat a ground as we could have. Because our property has a slope towards the front of the house, we decided to do what's called a seat cut. And all that means is that we took the lowest point, which was the front of the house, and we set our little stick up to it, so our little rotary laser, and we cut all the ground out all the way to the back of the house to be at the same level with the front of the house. So from the video, it looks like the ground is still up above the block, which obviously right now it is. Once we do our final grading, and all the dirt will come around the house, so it'll leave that top block exposed and everything else will be backfilled. But before we do that, we've got to put gravel in, we've got to put a drain in. You never want to have water up against your foundation wall.
So here is our finished seat cut. Basically what we did was created a large pad of even ground that we can now dig our 8-inch footings into, which is what the foundation blocks will rest on.
All right, so our grading's done. Getting ready to string it out and get ready to cut our footers. Take in here, string, get her done.
The next step is to dig the footings. These are long, narrow trenches where concrete will be poured and the block will be placed on top. It is extremely important these be placed exactly as the house is laid out. If we don't get these square and the concrete is poured off center, the whole house will be affected. So Jed is spraying the lines from his pre-measured corners so that the operator can see where to dig. He is holding a grade stake of sorts connected to the laser level. They have measured exactly how deep the channels need to be so that there is an even amount of concrete throughout. You'll see periodically he is moving the stick into different parts of the trench to ensure the correct height. The trenches are done, which took just about the whole workday. Once they were complete, Jed took pieces of 24-inch rebar and hammered them in so their tops were exactly 8 inches high according to the laser level. He did this at the corners and every 4 feet on runs, and this is how they make sure there's always the code minimum of 8 inches of concrete footing.
There it is, our concrete. On the roll.
You may be wondering where the rebar is. We had steel filaments added to our concrete. Now, this is a fairly new additive, at least where we are, but it actually surpasses rebar in strength for the concrete. Makes the footing process a lot quicker, and it's definitely a worthwhile added cost to the price per yard. This pour took 4 hours, 3 trucks, and 12 yards of concrete, which we ended up being short like 2.5 yards anyways. We had another truck come out the next day so we could finish filling the post bases in the middle of the house. This is what the boys came up with for screeding. It's the term real pros use to say that they're settling the concrete evenly so there is a smooth, flat surface when it cures.
All right, it is time for block work. So what we got to do is get all this block, which we've got several stacks. I'll show you. Everywhere on the property. We've got to get it all stacked up, ready to go for the block guy. So he made this little makeshift wheelbarrow. We got to stack it on there about 6 blocks high and take it inside the foundation. But before I do that, I got to make sure that they're all upright. The way you can tell if they're upright is on the pallet. Typically they're put upside down, but if you don't know already, you can see on this side, this little middle part is skinny. You turn it over, it gets a little fatter. It's almost like a little handle. That is the side that goes up. So every time you put a block out, make sure that side's up.
Block is a very labor-intensive job, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can really screw it up. So this was another place where we wanted to learn first. We hired a great guy who's done masonry his whole life, and as you can see, it turned out amazing. As you can see, Jed isn't always the boss. Sometimes he does do the grunt work too. If you remember a second ago, this is the drain area Jed was talking about. This will have gravel, a French drain, and a fabric silk cloth put in before the backfill happens. This directs moisture away from the foundation, back into the soil and towards the front of the house.
Okay, so for this foundation wall, we decided to go with an 8-inch block, 8 inches by 8 inches by 16 inches. All that means is that once you have your mortar in, what the dimension should be with the mortar and the block together is an 8-inch by 8-inch by 16-inch. And so that goes all the way around, and with code you're allowed to go up to 5 feet tall with that. We will only be 4 feet tall in the ground, and we'll also have some of these voids filled with concrete, some rebar in it to help stabilize and strengthen the wall.
These were long, hot August days, and these guys worked so incredibly hard. They started early when the sun was low, and they would take a break during the middle of the day and then finish after the sun was going behind the hill. This was a lot of work, but it turned out really, really great.
Super pro tip, if you have no water on your property and you're building, get an IBC tote. Let's say fill it, but put about 100 gallons in it, bring it to the job site, put it on some cinder blocks, you got water for a while. So inside, we put one of these, it's called a J-bolt. What this does is just holds your seal plate down to your foundation wall. So that is what you could attach your floor joist to, which then you attach your subfloor to, and then, you know, your walls, your rafters, everything's tied to the foundation itself. In the very top run of our foundation wall, we put these louvered vents, and that is for the crawl space. So when you have a crawl space, that is not temperature controlled, you are required by code to put these in. Now, if you have a vapor barrier, I think you can go 1 every 1,000 square feet. If you don't have a vapor barrier, it's 1 every 150 square feet, and that's just dependent on the code in the area that you are in. So you have to watch for your codes in your area because they're all different. We will be putting a vapor barrier, but I think having more airflow is better than the absolute minimum. Okay, so in our foundation, we opted not to do engineered floor joists. So in order to do that, we had to pour more footings. Now it has to be at least 2 foot wide, 2 foot wide, 12 inches deep. At least that's the code here. These are probably about 2 feet deep. I just poured whatever concrete we had left into these. And we will be putting posts with a post base to keep that wood up off of the ground so there's no moisture ever getting to the wood. And that'll carry a beam that we will then be able to run our floor joists and set on top of our beam, just like it is another foundation wall.
So here is the finished foundation. We have dug the lot out to grade. We have trenched our footings. We've poured our footings. We have set the block. Now we have the sill plate applied to the top and we are ready to start framing. We hope you learned something and we hope you'll continue this journey with us. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we really appreciate you watching.